Okay, so we'll Bez Hashem, Rabbi said, we'll try to give new meaning to Chazal when they say Ein Mayim El Torah. They try now to give a new Havana to this Ein Mayim El Torah. There's Azayfil Torah in Mayim. What exactly is the Havana of Mayim? Begin to appreciate the Halachos B'Shefer, a vifel that you need it. It's there. There's so much Mayim in the world. There's so much Mayim. And by this sugya, you can say there are so many different shilas. At first, I was going to focus on one specific shilah, two specific shilas. And I said that, you know what, Ein Mayim El Torah. So Azayfil Mayim, Azayfil Torah, we have to try to get to as many shilas as we can get to. And as Hashem, it's of the sugyas of Hilchos Brachos, it does seem to be of the most sveikus and most, so many shilas and so many fights.
Not the first time the Rav made that statement.
Yeah, but I'm going to keep on making it.
We know.
The Mishnah says in Brachos on Daf Mem Daled, Hasheiseh Mayim Litzam Oi. Person drinks it, Litzam Oi. Every word here needs a beer. He drinks it for his thirst. Makes a shackle. Kum Rabbi Tarfon. And when you first see Rabbi Tarfon, you find this to be a very strange statement. Rabbi Tarfon says, Bayrin Nefashis Rabbis V'Chasrayna. Was it das a bracha achrayna? No, Rabbi Tarfon means the bracha Rishayna would be a Bayrin Nefashis. Before we start, I want you to understand that the pashtus is probably like Rabbi Tarfon. If you think about it in that, you'll be able to appreciate the sugya a bit more. Kum to Rabbi Tarfon, and he says, water has no taste. Water is not something that in essence, it hydrates the body. It gives the body, it certainly gives the body a chiyas, but water has no taste. And perhaps birchas nenin is kishmoy keinhu, and we know the basic most prerequisite is a hana, and the hana of water is overshadowed by its boire nefashis rabbis. It's something that the Rebbeinu Shalom put into the bria as a belay sprayra. The person can't live without it. Boire nefashis rabbis, HaKadosh Baruch Hu made the nefashis v'chasreinim. The basic lacks what they're needing. Says Taisus and Brachos and Daf Lamed Zayin. What are the basic things they're needing? Bread and water. Okay, so bread is chashiv, so we have to make a special bracha. But water, maybe no bracha at all, or at least say the bracha, which you'd have to make. Boirin nefashis, rabbis, vechasreinim. The things you're lacking are water. Val kol HaRav says Taisus means things that HaKadosh Baruch Hu could have left it with just bread and water, but he made life geschmack, and he gave us what was Taisus's sour sticks in the sour sticks that gave apples. He gave us tapuchim, says Taisus. So Bayern and Fudges, Rabbis, Vichas, Reinam. So that makes a lot of sense that should be the bracha Rishayna on Vaser, Agua, Mayim. That's the pashtus. Rabbi, the Tanakama, and obviously the way we paskin is we paskin not like that. Very interesting. Now you appreciate more. Rabbi Tarfon says, Boire, Nefashis, rabbis, v'chasranim. Once again, now this for sure we understand. The person has something caught in his throat, and now he wants to drink water to get it down. So saif, it's one of the lacks that the basic needs that a person made. Rabbi Tarfon says, you make a bari nefashis. Omar le Rava Barachan and Labaye, what do we do? Hilchos amai. Omar le poik chazi my Omar Dvar. Just one moment. See, I'm missing a line. Let's make sure I'm not missing a line here. The last words in the parak. Sorry. In other words, Rabbi Tarfon came along. Rabbi Tarfon came along and said, the Gemara says, "What's he coming off? Okay, if you're drinking something just to get something which is lodged in your throat down." That says the Gemara. Rabbi Tarfon's shita is buried in the fashas, like we explained. Obviously, when you're drinking it litzamai, Rabbi Tarfon was only talking about when you're drinking it litzamai. That the Gemara says, so what do? So the Gemara says you do like the minig. What's the minig? The minig is shahakol ni'abedvar. But now we have the avodah of trying to understand what's the vart that litzamai you make a shahakol. What exactly is the understanding? Shahakol is because I'm getting hana. The tzimoyin is hana, or even without hana. Once I'm doing it for the purpose of tzimoyin, thirst, so then you make on it a shahakol. Thirst itself doing it for thirst reasons is what requires a bracha of a shahakal. And it seems to be the words hashoise mayim litzamoy. Sound a little bit that there's something miyuchad about litzamoy. What's this? So the emphasis is that right away I want to read the Olam Mishnah Berurah and tell me what you think. Kloimar, let's declare a chakira by say.
We put the Mishnah Berurah on, please. Mordechai, please put the Mishnah Berurah on. Thank you. Sorry.
Mishnah Berurah Siv Kotim Membeis. Let's clear a shaila a second, Rabbi say.
Membeis.
It says up here, when you drink water because you are thirsty, you make a bracha. And the chiddush is that you don't make a boirei nefashis, you make a shahakal. Okay. Why? Is it because when I'm thirsty, so then I'm having hanos cheich? But the ikar reason is the hanos cheich. Why do you make a bracha? Because it's not enough to just have intravenous or get filled up. You have to have it through a ma'isa achila and a nos cheich. You have to enjoy the food in your throat. So that the pshat, when I'm thirsty, it's called an enjoyment. It's a nos cheich. If you're not thirsty or you're just dislodging something in your throat, so then you don't have a nos cheich. Is that the word? What's the pashtus? Is that how the Olam learned? It's a nos cheich. If I'm thirsty, then obviously I have a nos cheich. That's one way you could learn. Or maybe no. Maybe it's not that I have a na of the cheich. That's not what you need to have in order to make a bracha. In order to make a bracha, there has to be some form of hana. Maybe it's enough to have the na of thirst being quenched. Maybe that something is being done for the body and that requires a bracha. Again, is it the pshat that if it's a siman, at kama that I'm thirsty, so then it means I'm getting ana? That's the reason, though, you're making the brachas, you're getting ana. Or no. The thirst being quenching is a siba. It's enough of a reason itself to make a bracha. Your thirst is being quenched. Now, I could say nafkaminas. For example, maybe let's say a person is drinking before the tainus. He woke up on Shivasar. I hope I don't have a Tisha B'Av this year. So hopefully we won't have to use that as an example. But before Shivasar B'Tammuz, he woke up in the morning. So usually in the morning, first thing in the morning, you're thirsty. But he wasn't. So now he wants to know, I'm just drinking a whole bottle of water. Why? Because I want to be thirst. I want my thirst to be quenched. I want to make sure I don't become thirsty. But that in essence is maybe l'tzamai. But you're not thirsty. Right now, you're not getting a nos cheich. So yesh lachkor, what's the reason why I'm making the bracha on water? And when I'm thirsty, is the reason I'm making the bracha on the water when I'm thirsty, because when you're thirsty, you're obviously getting pleasure. You're getting ana. And the ikar is the nos cheich. And we have a Kabbalah that if you're thirsty, you're obviously having a nos cheich. Or no, maybe. When I make a bracha, you don't need to have a nos cheich. You need to have something positive. It can't just be a dislodging of a food, which isn't a positive hana. That's like a mavriach hariyaza. But any hana will go. The place is going to have a tremendous amount of nafkaminas. Number one, maybe nafkamina will be, let's say I'm drinking a hot water because I want the nice hot taste in my throat, but I'm not thirsty, but I like the feel of hot in my throat. Or maybe I'm drinking it to warm up my body, or maybe I'm drinking cold water because I want it, because my body's boiling. So what's the siba why you make a bracha l'tzamai when you're thirsty? Is it because thirsty is the hana? It means you're having hana in your throat, and then in all the cases it's not going to be enough. You need to have hana in your throat. Or no. Thirst is enough of a reason to make a bracha. That itself is a pleasure. Quenching thirst is a pleasure, even if it wouldn't be giving me hana in my throat. Then we would be able to declare other shilas, other hanas, which aren't necessarily hanas acheich. Before I begin, what did the Olam learn? What was the pastis? How did the Olam learn? Anybody brave enough?
Somebody else, not me. Rabbi Feldman, Rabbi Daniel, what do you say? We discussed this before.
I must tell you, most people learn you have to have a nos cheich. When I don't mean most svarim, I mean most human beings that learn the sugya. Most people, if you ask them, they'll think, yeah, when I'm thirsty, I'm having pleasure. When I'm not thirsty, I'm not having pleasure. And therefore dislodging and just filling up your body before a fast, or maybe getting a hot sensation in your body. I want my stomach to have a hot sensation. I want my body to have a cool sensation. It gets situations where it's a little bit in between. I enjoy the taste of cold water. We'll see. But let's say the extreme cases for a minute. I don't want the water at all, but I want my body to have cold in it because I'm boiling. I want my body to have heat in it because I'm freezing. I want my body to have water in it because of the tinniness that's upcoming. All those cases, you don't have a naschech. So if you learn that the vart of tzamoy is taste, and if I'm thirsty, I'm tasting. Over here, you don't have taste. But if you learn that the idea is thirst quenching is a type of hana, just like you understand, food is hana, taste is hana, and whatnot is hana. So there's another thing out there. So now you appreciate Rabbi Tarfon. Rabbi Tarfon came along and said, "What? There's no taste. So make on it a burden of fashis rabbis v'chasernim." We agree with Rabbi Tarfon. There's no taste. It's not called taste. But the hana of thirst quenching is the reason you're making the bracha. Now, if that would be true, the door would be open to start clearing other things. Well, if the hana of thirst quenching is enough, maybe the hana of a warm body that came through a water medium, maybe the hana of a cold body that came through a water medium, and maybe even the hana of a body that will not get thirsty. My body is a protected body now. I'm a camel, and my body has been filled up with water, and I won't be thirsty. Maybe that's also a pleasure of sorts, or maybe not. On each one of them, you can clear. Now, I think most people, they think the sugya is a sugya of hanas cheich, and therefore, we could end this year early. I think I have a shocking revelation in the Mishnah Berurah over here in Sivkat and Membeis, and I should know myself. I also think I learned that way always, and b'schus ha'olam, learning up the sugya nachamol, I think that there's a Mishnah Berurah that says mefurish not like this. Come to Mishnah Berurah in Sivkat and Membeis. And he says, Davka Mayim, Shein Achech Nene Mehem, Ki Im Shikish Esoysel Etzamai. He says, the Chayr is Mefurish. Davka Mayim, when the Chech is not Nene, the palate is not Nene, unless you're drinking when you're thirsty. Aval Kishisheseyu Shar Mashkin or Oichel Chatichas Pas. Then he says, but if you eat other things or drink other things, that you're not nene. Let's say a person he's got something lodged in his throat, so he takes down some applesauce. Says the Mishnah, of course you make a bracha. He says, why? Because the cheich is nene. So when I read this Mishnah Berurah, it sounds to me like what? I guess everything is totally in cheich nene. Oh, so everything's totally in cheich nene. So therefore, everything's simple. If you're thirsty, it must be your cheich is nene. And therefore, that's the answer to all our shilos. If the cheich isn't nene, nothing begins. If your throat doesn't enjoy the taste, nothing begins. And the vort of thirst is that it must be my throat is enjoying the taste. Very simple, everybody say. Charitz will tell you in taste. Does everyone agree to that?
That's the Mishnah Berurah says so. You're entitled to have a different shot.
Could anybody have a different shot than the Mishnah Berurah? I mean, unless, there's nothing to discuss, right? There's no shaila.
What's
the problem is the
use of the word cheich? Where did the Mishnah Berurah get the word cheich?
Yeah, but the Mishnah Berurah, part of the Ruach HaKodesh, part of the Emunas Chachamim. I would say that on this level, once you hit the Mishnah Berurah, there's really only one sefer that at least we can, with confidence say, could clearly argue with the Mishnah Berurah. Everyone, I'm not saying great Gedolim, Moshe, Chazanish, they took issue with the Mishnah Berurah. There are Chashulchan, but the Mishnah Berurah is the last stop on the train. I think there's one sefer that everyone agrees, and there's no pikpukim, that he could clearly argue on the Mishnah Berurah. There's one sefer, and that's the sefer Mishnah Berurah. In the sefer Mishnah Berurah, in Simon Reish Daled, we're in Reish Daled. In Sivkat in Mem, we're near Mem. We just did Mem base. So let's read Mem. Don't know what to do over here, everybody say. In Sivkat in Mem, it says like this: Litzamoy, nira l'didlav dafka litzamoy mamish. Here the Mishnah Berurah says a chiddush. He says when we say thirsty, it doesn't mean the guy is dying of thirst or whatever. He's like desperate or whatnot. Doesn't mean he's thirsty mamish, right? Ella bistama kol sha'achech nene me'amayim. If your throat is getting pleasure, mistama you are tzamei. Whoa. Mishnah Berurah just said, do you know why if I'm a little bit thirsty, you don't have to be mamish thirsty. It says in Mishnah Berurah that I don't think you need to be mamish thirsty. Says the Mishabura, ad kama that your cheich is nene, then you could assume he's thirsty. That's enough. Abaisa, what just happened here? Isn't thirsty a timtza to show me that my cheich is nene? I thought that the whole what was the chakir? The chakir is what's the ikar? The thirst, quenching the thirst. That's a sibas hana. That's why you make a bracha. Or is the ikar the hanas hacheich? And that the thirst is just a timtza to show me he's getting hanas hacheich. Over here, the Mishabura does the pum fakir punkt. Over here, the Mishabura says that we have a guy, we're not sure if he's thirsty so much. He's definitely not really thirsty. So Mishabura says, look, if you're getting a gnaw in the throat, stop right there, Mishabura. If he's getting a gnaw in the throat, that's it, it's enough. Once you get a gnaw in the throat, it's over. So why does the Mishabura have to continue the sentence? Just say, if he's getting a gnaw in the throat, he's getting a gnaw in the throat, and everything's told him getting a gnaw in the throat. The Mishabura says, no, if he's getting a gnaw in the throat, Mistami's thirsty. Who cares if he's thirsty? I care about one thing. Is he getting a gnaw in the throat? The whole purpose of being thirsty is to say that I'm getting a gnaw in the throat. Here, the Mishabura says the opposite. He says, if he's getting a gnaw in the throat, then Mistama, he's thirsty. You know what the Mishabura just said? The exact opposite. The ikar is he thirsty? So the gnaw, if you're getting a gnaw, then you know it must be you're thirsty. So then what's the bracha dependent on? The bracha will be dependent on if it's not you're getting a gnaw in the throat. The bracha is dependent on, are you getting a quenching of the thirst? And it seems to be that there's a bracha on a quenching of the thirst. Now, if that's true, then that means we could start. The Mishabura and Sivkot and Membeis. Read the Mishabura again, Rabbi Isai. The Mishabura doesn't mean that that's the reason why. When the Mishabura says that the hana of the cheich and the mayim, he's only coming lafuke food. He doesn't mean that's the reason why by mayim you do make a bracha. Really, by mayim, why do you make a bracha? Maybe because when I'm getting it on my cheich, it means that I'm getting a quenching of a thirst, and that's the reason why you make a bracha. But what the Mishabura means over there is he's coming to say, Mashe'ein kain, by other foods, that there's always hanas cheich. So then you automatically, there's automatically hanas cheich. But the Mishabura is not telling you that the sibas habracha, of course, if you get hanas cheich, that's also a sibas habracha. But by water specifically, it could be that the sibah of the bracha is the quenching of the thirst. So this Abaisai is l'ch'oira the shita of Mishabura. I think it is quite mechudish. I think it shocks people a little bit. But we'll see. Could be based on this, a lot of the shilas that we'll discuss, we might be able to have a little bit of a different angle. Is it crystal clear, Abaisai?
Yes.
Okay, so now we'll start. Now go one by one. Everybody, I have here about, 20, 30 shilas. Let's try to get to them. Now, we'll try to use a lot of the ideas. Let's first don the shilas. Maybe we'll see what we would think the Mishabura's angle in these shilas are. First of all, a great example of this, where we have one example, that's the Gemara's example. Something is caught in your throat, and you're not thirsty, and you take water to get it down, so you don't make a bracha. We're not talking that he's choking in a typical nefesh, but we're saying they know he has something lodged in his throat. And this is the reason why, of course, if a person takes a pill, says the Ben Ish Chai, or Paisa, you want to know the siyata d'shmaya of this wonderful koilel. In this week's Ben Ish Chai is Parshas Matis. He talks exactly about this sugya. Parshas Matis, Ois Yud Beis. How much siyata d'shmaya do we have over here? Paisa, half of a fella. And Ois Yud Beis, he writes him Shoyze Mayim Kedei. He's talking about the whole sugya in general. But him Shoyze Mayim to get down a pill, it's no bracha. De'enoi toyev l'mayim le'yavarich. If you're not thirsty, no bracha. If you're dislodging a piece of food, if you're getting down a pill, there's no bracha. Obviously, if you're taking applesauce, there is a bracha. Mishabura in the Bir Halacha, in the Bir Matzcha Shoyse. He gives another example. Let's say a person knows, I'm not enjoying water at all. He comes to a simcha, something. Now, there's a big shaila in Hilchos Zimun, which we weren't yet zeicha to learn, but there's a big shaila in Hilchos Zimun that if a person has two people and a third guy has a food, then usually he's mitzaref for a zimun. What about a drink? So the Mishabura, he brings a shita. It's a big machlekes. Some say water is enough. Some say water is not enough. Certainly, the chatchila, you're not supposed to use water. But let's say you're going with the shita that water is enough. You have two people, and one third guy had two people had bread, and the third guy had water. So there are shitas that hold these mitzaref to a zimun. Come to Be'er Halacha, and he says, "Lefi that shita he's mitzaref to a zimun. It's only if he's thirsty. It's only if he's thirsty." So like the Mishabura, Mela, Lefizem Shasim Mayim, just to be mitzaref to a zimun, he means Lefi the shita the Magen Avraham. Or let's say the guy is a HBrachos. He just wants to get out of it, making, so he takes, everyone says, just take water. No way. Because water, at time that you're not thirsty, doesn't fodder a bracha. Here, I'm getting the water in my stomach for what? To get out of a bracha. There's nothing to do with, that's not a hana, that's not a positive hana in my guf, it's not a quenching of thirst, it's not samela, no bracha. And therefore, very important, if he has a suffix, he doesn't know if he can make a bracha achrayna, so he says, I'll just drink water. No way. Because just like Shoise Mayim Litsamai, in the bracha Rishoina, it has to be you're thirsty in order to break it. So too in the bracha achrayna. So you can't get a shear that requires a barin of fascis unless you have a sheer revias of what you were thirsty for. So that's case number 2. And case number 3, case number 2 is the Brachos Hamazon, or if you have a suffix bracha, that's the third case. Now, let's say you have a case of a person that every morning he wakes up and he has a cup of water. He's not thirsty. It's a rare case because most people are thirsty in the morning, but he has a cup of water because it's healthy. And which doctor told us this? The great doctor from Radin. Mayim baboiker l'refua lo yevarech. If he's thirsty, then he will make a bracha. But let's say a person has, I guess every day he wakes up in the morning and he has a cup of water. What was healthy about it? I don't know. We'll have to see. Maybe this will get back to our other shaila. But if he has a cup of water because of health reasons, so then he's absolutely not thirsty. So then he does not make a bracha. Next. Now, in this case, I'm going to ask the Olam to help me out a little bit here. The Bir Halacha brings in this Dibra Matzla Shaisa, Hashaisa Mayim Lishrois HaOichel B'Meyav. What exactly is this? This assisting of the digestion. What exactly is this? Shriyas HaMayim, Shriyas HaOichel. He says what does it do? I don't think he means that the food is lodged in your esophagus. What does this mean? It means it's in the stomach already, it sounds like, no? Shrois HaOichel B'Meyav. So Mishabura says on this that if he does it, what's the nafkamina? The Mishabura says if it's in the middle of the meal, so then the water is anyways pattered with the bread. He says Elamai, he does it after the meal. Mishabura says if you have water after the meal to let the food settle, Mishabura says you do make a bracha. Now mazeh vel mazeh. So I saw a very interesting thing in the Mishnah Halachos in Cheluk Yud Aleph in Simukuf Samach Dal. The shoyel asked him, "Do we pass him like this, Mishabura?" So the Mishnah Halachos from Menashe Klein, he said, what do you mean, do we pass him like the Mishabura? He said, the Mishabura is a Mishabura. Who could say not to pass him like the Mishabura? He said, you must mean you're asking the question because Kanira, you see that the Minig Olam is not like that. And therefore, you're saying that people will drink water after the meal and they will not make a bracha on it. So then he goes on to say, if you ask me, I think that the pshat in the Minig Olam, I think the minig is okay not to make a bracha. He says, why? If you're not thirsty, I feel the lish says it's not a shtia. What's the difference between that? If you're dislodging a pill or getting a pill down or dislodging a food. So he says, you shouldn't make a bracha. And he says the minig olam is not like the Bir Halacha, and therefore he explains the minig olam. So now, first of all, I'm not exactly sure what minig olam this is. This is a very strange case. Is anybody familiar with this minig olam? You have to be talking about a person that he ate a meal, and then he was wanting to have that water to digest the food, and he didn't have it before he benched. I'm not so familiar with such a minig olam of people doing that. It's like a weird thing. On a weird thing,
Whether he had it or he didn't. When did he drink it? Right
He
before
says, the
benching.
Brachos says the case has to be that he's drinking it after the meal. So that means we're talking about a very strange case. So you can't have a minig oilam on a strange case. Most people, if they just ate a meal and they want to, I don't exactly know what this is, that they're, shoyer the food in their stomach, but it's got to be a guy who just ate an entire meal and he decided to bench and then do it. Most people wouldn't do that. Most people would eat, drink, and then bench. So to say there's a minig oilam of people that do this and don't make a bracha on that water, did anybody here have, I'm looking at the participants, can I know enough participants, did anybody ever in his life see this? That we could convey a minig oilam. Then afterward, we have a shaila. What's pshat tak in the Mishnah Berurah? That's a good shaila. But to say that there's a minig oilam not like the Mishnah Berurah, I've never seen this in my life. So
maybe he didn't, first of all, maybe he didn't wash and he didn't drink anything during his Suda.
But I have no problem with that. But then, is that a normal thing that we find people that they'll eat? I want to ask them practically. You've seen people eat cake and cookies and whatever, and then drink a cup of water without a bracha? I've never seen this in my life.
I've never seen it.
I've never seen it in my life. And Daniel, Rabbeinu Agadol Rab Daniel, you agree with me?
Please.
And nobody has seen this ever in his life. So now we don't have a minig oilam that we have to be miyashiv. Now, once we don't have a minig oilam that we don't have to be miyashiv. So now I'll ask you, so what is taka the pshat in the Mishnah Berurah? This is really a great taina that l'chayra, he's doing it just to settle the food. And if you're doing something to settle the food, so then why is that different than dislodging? Or why is that different than, why is that different than, so this is very interesting, Rabbi Isai. Let me read you from the Rashba that the HaRav seems to be quoting from. The HaRav, one moment. He seems to be quoting over here based on a Rashba. And the Rashba is coming from a Ravid. And he writes these words. One moment, I'm sorry.
Is it in the Rashba al Shas of Brachos?
I'm just looking in my notes. I didn't seem to write down where. That's what I'm trying to find if I have it for the Oilam. I'll have to say about Peh. He has a Shaila. The Ravid has a wonderful Shaila. The Ravid Shaila is why is the Gemara, when it wants to bring the example of a Shoyse Mayim L'Tzamai, it goes to a very big extreme. The truth is, no matter what, you have to ask this Shaila about Isai. The Gemara goes and says that what's it coming Lafuke? And the Gemara goes to a super extreme, to a case of where the body is getting zero from that water, and the water is just fully dislodging. So the Rashba, the Ravid, they say there's a lot in between. A lot in between. Why do you have to say Ashay Semayim L'Tzamai? What's it coming Lafuke? Maybe it's coming Lafuke. Cases in between. It goes to a very extreme case. It sounds like that only in a case of where it's mamish not doing something for the body. You should know this is something that we have to come back to because the diak is takar gavaltik diak. But anyways, what the Rashba goes on to write, they go on to say over there, is this case of Lishrois Michael. They say, therefore, let's say a person is drinking water to be Shoyre Michael, that they say is called L'Tzamai. Now, I think what they mean is that I think, the Olam will help me here. This one, I'm not so 100%. Let me ask somebody who's a day older than me. What exactly are they doing by being Shoyre the Michael? Before I tell you what I think the Rashba is saying. What exactly are they doing by Shoyre Michael? What exactly is this?
As you get older, the digestive system slows down. Bachar, my son can eat anything at any time, and he's fine. It slows down, like all other bodily functions.
And then what? And then it's heavy?
It's heavy, it sits in your stomach. It sits in your stomach, and by liquefying it, by liquiding it, by hydrating it, it's easier to get through your system. So that's a quasi refuah. Yeah. And avoids constipation, right? Says Sri. We're getting down to the nitty-gritty here, mamish.
So I don't know. Therefore, what should I tell you, Rabbi Isai? So everyone here is sitting here saying, so the Mishnah Berurah is a Pella, right? Mishnah Berurah is a Pella. L'chayra, this is mamish chanktu. So I don't know. This will be another riot to what we spoke about at the beginning of this year, that it sounds to me from the sheet of the Mishnah Berurah that you do not require hanas chayt in order to make a shahakal. And that in order to make a shahako, fakir, is a siman that your body is getting thirst. But thirst is one example. Hanos is one example. Thirst is one example. And now I have another example. Let's say I have something else that's doing something positive for my body. Lamashal, Lefi Rabbi Tarfin, would everybody in this room understand that, or I guess in every room around the world, would everybody understand you'd make a bar nefashis rabbis v'chesrainim? I think so. I think everyone understands that on a dislodging of a piece of meat, you're not going to make a bar nefashis rabbis v'chesrainim. It's not one of the needs that Hashem made that gives a positive something to my body. We have no reason to believe that Rabbi Tarfin and the Tanakhama are arguing on the yisoid. We just have one idea. What bracha do you make? But the yisoid is the body getting something positive? So if the body's getting something positive, you make on a shahakal bar nefashis. So now, what was just described to me is that there's water going down, and it seems like there's no anascheich. I agree, but there's something extremely positive that's being done for the body.
So, now, in fact, why should it not be mitzvah for zimonai b'zay? The very positive.
There it's not doing something for the body. It's doing something for the Halachos Bashever. It's doing something for the Oilamis. It's doing something. It's a halachic issue. That's not in the Gavra lane. That's a halachic issue. It's doing something for my Oilam Haba. But I don't know. Rabbi Menashe Klein's kasha from the Minig Oilam. Now we don't have to be miyashiv. There's no Minig Oilam on this. So Elamai don't understand the Mishnah Berurah. Oh, that's a kasha. What's the pshat in the Mishnah Berurah? No. If the state in the Elik Mishnah Berurah and it says in the other Mishnah Berurah, so now we have a few makayers to this idea, which I agree, it's earth shattering and it's very mechudesh. And the diak is really from the Gemara. The Gemara says that chankse umse is coming. Excuse me, a shaisa mayin litzama is coming lafuke mai. So we would have said coming lafuke. What do you mean coming lafuke? It's coming lafuke when he's not thirsty. Any other case in the world where he's not thirsty and he's drinking. Klaimar, any case in the world where he's not getting a noschech. That's what we would have said. Any case in the world where he's not getting a no-nitzchech, game over. On water, you make a bracha only if you get a natzchech. And the Gemara says the most, I don't chalila mean fadrate, but the most vaita zach. Why? Because it's trying to tell you, because all the guys in between are also examples of, so the Gemara found one case, or like taking down a pill. In other words, when the water is not doing something positive for the body. So what's another example of that? Benching, zimun, swafek brachos, pills, this, that. Maybe we'll have other examples. But once the water is doing something positive for the guf, it sounds like you make a bracha. Let's go weiter. Maybe we'll have more rise to this idea.
Why would that be different than if I ate a food that I just swallowed without having any taste to it? I'd also make a bracha on that because there's no hana in my throat, but I'm having.
No, so that you have to say that's stam shaila, which the emes is you have to stam clear in both directions, which I really prefer not to talk about now, but I'll just clear the shaila. There's a shaila that number one, let's say I hate the food, but it in essence is a food that people enjoy the taste or it has a taste, or the other direction. You just swallow the food and just don't even have the taste. Either your person chalila, let's say he got corona and the taste was
right, they lost the taste.
Yeah. So it could be that we done the chepza. That's a possibility, anyways. We done the chepza, anyways. But water.
Why would be not in my throat? Why not any hanamaguf has? You know what I mean?
Oh, and a ganami. That's what we're saying. Now the feed that's out of the Mishnah Berurah, it's any potential body. Positive, I know I can hear it has to be positive and not just a mafriach ori or some zaitiga outer body experience. For example, a person that is, let's say, the Halachos goes on. He says, "Who adinim shaysim mayim kedei lahoyrid hamazon." He says sometimes it gets caught, and everyone knows this. You get caught in the esophagus. So then that again, that's just dislodging. And then the Mishnah Berurah says no bracha. Weiter, let's say a person has a miserable tasting medicine. The Shulchan talks about this case, some miserable tasting medicine. And it's a bitter taste in his throat. Oh, once again, it's not doing something positive for the guf. It's removing a shter. It's taking away something that's miserable. That is not doing something, it's not benefiting in a positive fashion. The Shulchan says in this case, that if a person drinks, because he says, Lahatem ezer refuah mora, ein tzarich bracha. The mayim ein shum tam. It may not same. That's true. The Shulchan himself sounds a little bit that it's all tali and cheich nene. But the rayon, I would imagine, the Bir Halacha, the Mishnah Berurah would agree to. Now, let's say you have a person, he drinks water because he wants to be full. He wants to trick his body. Some people, they go on a diet and they'll drink water beforehand so that they fill up their stomach and that they won't be hungry. He just wants to lose weight. I imagine this is the methodology. Am I correct? That's the methodology? I think that's the methodology. He just gets filled up. And then once he's filled up, he's not going to be hungry. And many do this for dieting purposes. What would the olim say? L'chayra, I think even the way we're learning the Bir Halacha, he still wouldn't have a bracha on that. Because not doing something positive for the guf. It's like taking a stone and a boulder and putting it in the stomach. And he's telling the stomach, don't worry, you're full. So I would imagine that everyone would agree over here also that this is not to make a bracha. I did see that the Rebbe of Ephraim in Chelik Zayin, Simas Tamadal Taka says not to make a bracha. And and l'chayra, it's no. Obviously, we're talking in the case where he's not thirsty, and therefore l'chayra, no bracha. L'chayra. Now, what happens? You get a cup of water from the Admor. Who's the Admor? Whoever your Admor is. Okay, Adonenu, Morenu, V'Rabbeinu. And he gives you a cup of water, and there you are. You have this cup of water, and you're right in front of the Rebbe, and it has
Rebbes don't give out water.
This is Eretz Yisrael. Wer hat Geld? Rabbi Gadesman. Man lebt in the land von Milk and Honey. Ich bin du. Du Rebbes, was hat nicht Geld? Sie got nur Wasser. Aber sag, sehr viel Wasser. Is they geben Wasser? Oder they geben mineral Wasser? Which we'll have to see in a minute. Let's go.
Van. Only van.
All right. So let's say it's a fake Rebbe. I mean, the full Rebbe. Verstehst? And then this Rebbe, he doesn't know how to be a Rebbe yet. And so nehmt sich a bisschen a Glas Wasser, and he gives us the Wasser. Oh yeah, or a Litvak, who for sure doesn't know how to be a
Litvak. It doesn't have the rules. Yeah.
Doesn't know the rules. You come to, he says here, Shirayim from the Rebbe, and now you have water. So now what? So they asked this question. You can only ask this question to a Litvak. So they asked the greatest Litvak who lived in our door. Chaim Kanievsky in the Sheilas HaRav in Chelik Beis Perkut Ches, Ois Daled. Do you make on a Hana Ruchni? Unbelievable. In Bnei Brak, they bought this Shiloh. Her boy said that there's a Rebbe that actually gave water. And now I'm seeing that the Baba Sali gave water. So they ask if the Rebbe gives water, do you make a bracha and you're not thirsty? So Chaim Kanievsky said, no. Another example of this, in the next ois in the Sheilas Rav, they asked him, let's say some people drink water on Motzei Shabbos, it's the Beirish of Miriam, and they're not thirsty. It's Hana Ruchani. He said, no, you don't make a bracha again, because that's not doing something for the guf. That's the water is some external thing. It's not something positive for the guf. Now let's say you have a lady and she drinks water because she's nursing. And when she's nursing, so then it's known that the water gives you more of a milk supply. Now, this Shaila, I must tell you, I'm a little bit more nervous about this Shaila. The truth is a lot of ladies in the nursing are very, very thirsty. Then it's a maldaber. There's no shaila. I don't know. This shaila, I do see.
The Rav goes further. Can ask a serious follow-up. You come to a shiva, let's say. Let's not put the shrine. And he comes in and he says he wants to be mechaber you. He says, here, what would you want? I said, I'll take a little water. If no interest in drinking water, not thirsty at all. I'm only drinking it because the Rebbe was mechaber you.
No bracha. Definitely no bracha.
I'll tell you what the pirch on this is. Often when they give you, they say macha bracha.
But what do they say it with? With Wasser?
I don't know. So the Rav Sak is no bracha. You go with your Rebbe, says what?
No way.
Wow. Okay.
No, definitely not.
He may glare at you, think you went off the derech since you last saw you or something. You're not making a bracha.
Don't choose water next time.
Tell him that you're chayshish on the hechsher.
Okay.
Now, a woman that's nursing, I must tell you, I would have thought, Klape, the dvarim that we spoke out today, quite possibly you would make I know she's drinking water. Let's say she's not thirsty, but she just needs a milk supply. I would have thought today that Lafi, what we spoke out, that's a positive thing, doing something positive in a gashmistic sense for the body. I would have had a tzad to make a bracha. I do see, I'm Makar Mekaymi, I see the Torah say you led this, Rabbi Yitzchak Zilberstein, Zolangazin. He says not like that. He says that, Me'ikra din potter, not if she's not thirsty. He says it's toiv to mevarach something else and to pater it. I was bothered by this. I'm a little bit bothered by this, I must admit. I don't know, maybe you learned the other tzad. Why is this different than being shayra the food in your stomach? I think it's a kal v'chaymer. Here it's doing something mamish positive. It's going to make milk. I don't know. Maybe you'll say that the milk is not her. She's a milk supply for a baby. So maybe even within this lumdis, you can hear that's not doing something positive for her body. It's doing positive for her milk production, which is not her chavtza. Next, these shilas that I said I'm about to talk about, these are hard shilas. They're easy shilas to understand, but these are the difficult ones in the halacha l'maisa. Shaila number one of the difficult ones. You have somebody who, how do we start? Let's say a person has a sore throat. This is the story of my life. He has a sore throat and he drinks water to clear his throat. What does Zolim say on that one? What's the lumdus of clearing your throat? Are you chanke umse? Are you getting down the phlegm?
Tell us what you just did. What did the Rav just do?
That's what I was trying to figure out. 1 minute. It's hard to do this when there's pressure. Right. In essence, I am trying to get down the phlegm. Right. So it is like a chanke umse. That's what I would think. All right, let's see.
We have many Meiser Ravs of Darshanim who've been darsh to us.
That did not make a bracha.
I remember some Rishivas took their hat on, made a holy shul out of it, and they made a bracha in the middle of the shir.
But there's no raya. Maybe they're also thirsty.
I don't know if that's because they would. I don't know. I don't know what the mechayev of the mitzias is. The throat or the third. I don't know.
It's a very schwer shaila. This shaila bothers me. I mean, obviously, it's also very negay in me. And so let's see. Maybe we'll bring a riot to this from some other shaila. So now there's a bunch of little shailas here, which are not little, but they're very difficult. Yeah, but what's the lumdus of a dry throat, Rabbi Parkov? The lumdus of a dry throat is that's the shaila, Rabbi Parkov. Are we doing something positive and that the body is now lubricated? And then maybe I could say it's like shriyas me'ayim. Or are we just getting down the phlegm? That's the thing I'm not so clear about. What do you say, Rabbi Parkov?
Dry throat is different than phlegm. Phlegm, there's something there. Dry throat, I need water in the throat. It's like shriyas me'ayim.
No, what I have right now is phlegm. You're saying, let's say it's in that matter where it's dry.
That's the chanche.
That's chanche. And what's dry? Dry is like when you're like that. It's mamish like a sore throat. So it's a lubrication of the throat.
It's like shriyas me'ayim.
It's like shriyas me'ayim. So that's you should know. I very much hear what you're saying, Rabbi Parkov, and it's going to be extremely difficult in the halacha l'maisa. In other words, to apply it. In other words, the person's going to have to figure out, is he a chanke umse? Like right now, I think I'm a chanke umse. But there are times when it's just dry and scratchy. And then that case would be like a shriyas me'ayim, and you would require a bracha. And that's why any Meiser Rav we have from Rosh Hashiva, we have to figure out, what was he up to? Was he dry throat? Was he chanke umse? But let's go a little weiter. Maybe from this we'll get a clarity. So let's say, all right, let's go straight to dry throat. The guy make dry throat. I saw in the Nishmas Avram, he has a lot of these shilas. I sent to Oilam the Marmakim. It's a very nice Marmakim. He has one after the other where he talks about a lot of these shilas. He brings there from the Nishmas Avram, from the Shmir Shabbos Hilchos. So it's the first ois in Siman Reish Dalet. A martzeh, a speaker who feels a dry throat, and he drinks water lahar tivapeh, to moisten the mouth. He must make a bracha even though he's not thirsty. Now it's interesting. He doesn't say what I would have said. He says because you're getting the cheich is getting anah. Interessant. What? Let's say someone gives me a massage in my throat. I have to make a bracha. He's learning anas cheich. There's lots of different anas cheichs. One anas cheich is you're thirsty. There's an anas cheich of dry. I don't know. But say if that's true. So when I have phlegm in my throat, that's also a hanas cheich. But I don't understand this lashon. I must admit, I don't fully understand this lashon, right? I was thinking maybe a little differently. I was thinking a little bit along the lines that when you have a dry throat, maybe that's a form of thirst. Maybe that's thirst. A throat. My throat. I'm not thirsty at all right now, but I have phlegm, and I feel the need to get it down because I feel it impedes me as I talk. That. I think you probably don't make a bracha. Mashein Kain, when it comes to a dry throat, perhaps that itself is a thirst. Maybe that's thirst itself. The Hilchos goes on to bring the Melech Shel Kol Beis Yisrael, Rav Yashiv Zeichet Tzadik Levracha, whose yahrzeit is his yahrzeit. No, what? It's now? When's the yahrzeit? No, it wasn't yesterday. It's coming up.
So the Rav is saying that dry throat is thirsty.
I think phlegm-filled throat is chankeumse. I think dry-filled throat is probably, that's a form of thirst. That is thirst. I'm thirsty. There's one thirsty is that you're weak from thirst. There's one is that I'm dry and I want that pleasure in my throat. Maybe that's what the Shmir Shabbos means. Meaning that I'm being malad at tzad. There's another tzad, which is Rav Yashiv, the Melech Shel Kol Beis Yisrael, and he says, he says, no way. He says, no way. So it's interesting. I see the Shevek Kahasi in Chelik Aleph in the 96th Siman. He writes, many make this mistake, and they think that a dry throat is thirst. There's daiti, they're the Yavshis Apeh is not thirst, and then he says Tzarachian. So I don't know how you can say many are making a mistake when it's Tzarachian, but I definitely agree with that statement that it's Tzarachian. Right? I definitely agree with the statement it's Tzarachian. I would have myself thought there's a chilik between a phlegm-filled throat and a dry throat, and I would have thought that a dry throat, you do make a bracha. I have Moira to paskin such a thing, maybe B'tzirif, what the Mishnah Berurah has been telling us the whole day so far, that any positive to the body, like Rabbi Parkov said, it lubricates the body. It does something positive for the body. Perhaps that's a reason that a person would make a bracha, but it's a very difficult shaila. So if a person would want to have water before a tainus, based on what we said today, now we can at least understand the tzaddim. If you learn that the entire lumdis is hanas cheich, so then of course there's no hanas cheich. He's having a drink. He's not thirsty. He's nothing to discuss. He's just filled right 2 minutes before Yom Kippur, and he just fills up a whole bottle of water. Then of course there's not even a shaila in the world. And the emissaries, there are many poskim that say that he doesn't make a bracha. The Das Torah, the B'jana, and Siv Zayin says no bracha. The Buchacha, he seems to go that I'll read you the lashon. He says, "Came to b'shvil tzimoin shoyse vein sigel v'shalei l'tzamayim v'shalei yoel tzimoin gam achar V'ulai tzamah koilo gam kishkam nasa v'signoin adit sachish shasei." I'm sorry. The Buchacha declares the Shaila, and the Das Torah says that he has the ksavim of the Buchacha, and in those ksavim, he comes out in Shaisa Gedei that you shouldn't be thirsty, no bracha. Oh, no, sorry. He says, no, Right.
Everywhere there's no bracha rishayna, the same shaila for bracha achrayna.
Wait, one moment, I'm sorry. He clears the shaila, and at first he said you should make a bracha, and then va'ikar noita, he had the ksavim of the buchacha that va'ikar noita levarach rakashut samei kfar. He's chayzer. The buchacha says you should only make a bracha if you're already thirsty, not if you're preventing thirst. And that's the psak of Reb Nissen, Zechat Tzadik Levarcha. He has a sefer on ribis in the 194th page over there. He says it also, and they asked Rechaim Kanievsky this question in one of the Alibud Hilchos, and he says no bracha unless you're getting a hana d'shtia. Now, I want to just explain. There are those that say not like this. The Shevet Levi, for example, in Chelik Tessim and Membeis, incredible chiddush, and they bring from the Imrei Emes. Imrei Emes, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's not the Imrei Emes. I think it was actually the Svas Emes, but he has a sefer called the Imrei Emes, and it's the Kutim from the Svas Emes, and Brachos Daf Mem Daled. And over there he says, if you are drinking water just to prevent yourself from being thirsty on a hot day, very common shaila, he argues on what we just said, and he says you do make a bracha. And Rabbi Isai, if you learn like that, it's barer the tzad in the chakira that we mentioned before, which is doing something positive for the body. Now, it's not muchach that the Mishabur will agree to this. It could be the Mishabur will say, no, that's not called positive, that's called preventative. Okay, you could done. I would have thought a little bit like the Imrei Emes over here. Shevet Levi says, Libi Noite, the Levi of the Shevet Levi, Hashoise Kadesha Lo Yitzma, yes, has to make a bracha. So I must tell you, it's a very, very big shaila. It's a very schwer shaila, and I would certainly try to pater it. It's only going to help though to pater the bracha rishayna. If you take a dot of sugar before you drink a whole bottle of water, very nice. You pater the bracha rishayna, but now you're going to have a problem in the bracha achrayna. Do you make a bracha achrayna? It's the same exact shaila.
Always the same shaila. There's no possible difference in bracha rishayna and bracha achrayna.
I don't think so. I'll read you from the Gra, has a sefer called the Imrei Noyim and Brachos on Daf Mem Hey. Omar Rabbeinu, that's the Gra. When a person drinks water, he has to be careful on the bracha achrayna because maybe he was thirsty in the beginning of the revius. You know, a person's a little thirsty, takes a sip. And then he just finishes the cup because it's there. Oh, so the going very nice, finish the cup because it's hey, but you have to know if you're thirsty or not. If you're not thirsty, no bracha achrayna.
Wow.
No bracha achrayna.
Isn't that true almost all the time? You're not as thirsty.
I'm not sure. The Chutshani, Reb Nissen, in that same sefer on page 194, he says, Ein ze matzi klal. It's not common. He says, if you started out thirsty, and he's going with the Chazon Ish's revius, which is big, but if you're thirsty, you don't just usually need a sip. But I'm a little bit nervous about this, because sometimes you do just need a sip, like that. I'm not sure why he says that. And I'm not so sure. I also don't know why he says, Ein ze matzi klal. If the goyin would warn his talmidim about it, then it means it wasn't matzi. You don't warn people about things that aren't common.
But the Mishabura brings other derasel, does not bring the Simrei Naim. Is that correct? So we're not chayshish for it? I have to worry by the time we finish the coffee cup that I'm not as thirsty as I was when I began, or I'm not thirsty at all.
No, one second.
No, I understand.
Let's say simple case. I know for sure. No, let's say my case. My case is a good case. That I'm before a tainus, and I just want to, get out of the shaila, because some say you do make a bracha just when you're just lubricating, just to get filled up with water, and some say you don't make a bracha. So I want to get out of the shaila, so I have a dot of sugar. So very nice. You got out of the bracha rishayna shaila, but you didn't get out of the bracha achrayna shaila.
Yeah, but the bracha achrayna is different because of what the Rav said. You can start off, and then all of a sudden, that somebody can vanish because you finished. At what point does that happen? I'm asking what does Mishabura bring this Imrei Noyam? I don't see it.
No, Mishabura doesn't bring the Imrei Noyam. But I don't know. I don't know if he argues on it.
If he didn't bring it, that means he must have seen it. Because
I'm not sure. The Imrei Noyam wasn't a sefer that they had. I don't agree with that. No, they didn't have the Imrei Noyam. I saw that the Shevet Levi in the Nishmas Avram, he brings down this idea from the Shmir Shabbos. He paskins like it. In the Shevet Levi, they have these koibitzim that they come out with, and he says it does a pashat halacha. Shoyis reviat samei rak lemixes shear ein mevarach bracha achrayna. If you're only thirsty in the first part, No bracha achrona.
What happened to your bracha achrona on the first revius, or the first part? It was paka? You had a chiyuv.
Whoa, no, for sure. If he actually drank a revius that he was thirsty, then for sure he makes a bracha achrona.
No, I'm saying you finished 45 minutes later, you're no longer thirsty. But there was a chiyuv on you to make a bracha achrona.
No. I mean within the cup. I'm talking about a case that the person drinks a cup of water, he takes a sip, he's no longer thirsty. Then he finishes the cup of water. That's the case we're talking about.
I understand that. So there was a chiyuv chal on him after the first sip. Where was that paka?
He didn't have a revius. Bracha achrona is telling you revius.
There's only a shiloh. So if he drank the first revius,
and he was thirsty throughout revius, then for sure.
But take what? So you have to bring
whatever the shear is, whatever the amount of time.
You have to make a bracha achrona, right?
Yeah, shear. So let's say some say by drinks it's faster, so let's say 30 minutes or whatever.
I'm saying so there's only negate to this narrow question where you didn't have a shear. Is that right?
Correct. Or my case, where I took a sugar to pater, and then my bracha achrona. I can't pater the bracha achrona shaila. Now
that's a different question. Ephraim's raising the question of the sipping of the coffee. What about that?
Yeah, that's a whole different shaila about the bracha achrona. That is this shaila by side is the guy every single day. A person that somebody asked me yesterday. He felt dehydrated. He was in the Kallus. He felt all dehydrated. He said he's totally not thirsty, but he's all dehydrated. So his body is telling him he's thirsty, but he's not getting enough chayich. This is the shaila by side of the Mishnah Berurah. If you learn like the Mishnah Berurah, you make a bracha. I can bring you names on both stadim of this shaila. I have that. They asked this shaila to Rebelsky. Rebelsky said you do make a bracha. Rav Nissen Karelitz said you don't make a bracha. I mean, it's big fights over here, right? They asked Chaim Kanievsky the shaila. Just to lubricate his body. Says that's also maybe called hana. What does Chaim Kanievsky mean? He means this shaila. Maybe the etzim fact that I'm getting something positive for my body requires to make a bracha. The shaila, also very important shaila. I'm drinking water, hot water or cold water, just to heat up my body. Now you have to be honest, Rabbi say. Sometimes you want the taste of hot water or the taste of cold water. I find that hard to believe that in that case you wouldn't make a bracha. If you want a taste, you want a nice cool glass of water, hot tea, you want a nice hot iced tea. That shaila I think is pashut you make a bracha on. I saw all types of diukim that the achrayim make. I think that case is nothing to discuss. If you want the taste of hot water, the taste of cold water is nothing to discuss. I think there's a shaila if you want to heat up your body. You want to heat up your body. And that I saw about it's like what we say a world war. I mean, and they bring in the Pri Chadash in a sefer called the Pulas at Tzaddik in Chelik Aleph in Siman Pei Gimel. Even though he's not thirsty, he says, yeah, to make a bracha. Now, again, I don't know what he means. I'm assuming he doesn't mean the simple case of that he's drinking it because he wants an ice cold case of cold water. He likes the taste of cold water. That's a taste. Of course you make a bracha. I think he means you're just trying to make your body cold. And once again, what's his diak? His diak is, why did the Gemara go to such a vita case? Why did the Gemara go to the case of just dislodging? Why didn't the Gemara say this case? Must be only dislodging, but anytime there's something positive, cooling up the body, heating up the body, yeah, make a bracha. And this Abaisai is, again, there's names on both stadim. I could hear that's called, it's freezing cold outside. And he just takes water just to heat up his body. It's doing something positive for the body. So, I could definitely hear, yeah. And now there's a Pri Chadash that says, yeah, I would definitely try to pater in all these cases. Okay? The guy with the shiloh of seltzer, I don't fully hear the shiloh of seltzer. It's one of those shilohs I never fully understood. Seltzer's a taste. What's the shiloh? Seltzer's a taste. You can tell me all
unflavored seltzer. The bubbles are taste.
It's a taste. That's a taste. Seltzer is a taste. It's a salty taste.
The mice is water.
It's a taste. That's a taste.
What Water
Carbonation is a taste.
If I say, I'll prove to you the taste.
Carbonation is a taste.
I'll prove to you the taste. Some people don't like the taste of seltzer.
not the taste. I don't like the bubbles. It's irritating. No.
Some people don't like the taste. No, my little daughter doesn't like the taste of seltzer.
She doesn't like the bubbles.
Salty taste.
Bubbles are too strong.
I don't understand it. I once spoke about it. Rav Scheinberg Zecher Tzadik Livracha. He told me he never understood the Shaila B'chlal, and there's a sefer called the Chedushay Basra in Ar Simon and Oisman Beis, which he brings down from Rav Scheinberg. And I was able to speak to Rav Scheinberg about it. He says, "Achush meid sheina kain." He says it's a taste. They like the taste. There's a salty taste. Very schwer to understand this. I don't understand it, Tzad. Nafkamina is if you're taking down seltzer when you have something caught in your throat to make a bracha. Okay?
We make seltzers here in America with a machine that puts no salt in, just gas in. And it's just
No, I don't mean they put salt in. I mean, it has a salty taste. I mean, that carbon dioxide. I don't mean salt. I mean like the taste. I don't know. On mineral water, I think it's pashut that you don't make a bracha if you're not thirsty. There's no taste of mineral water. It doesn't matter mineral water or not mineral water. You don't make a bracha on filtered water. That's the whole sugya. I don't know what there could be a need in on those things are. So this is what I say. Let's make a sikum. We definitely saw a lot.
I ask you one, Shaila.
Let me just make the sikum first, if you don't mind.
I got a new pill that I took first on Shabbos of Thomas. Took it with a drop of water, but it hurt my stomach very badly in the afternoon. And I read the instructions. He says you should take with a whole glass of water. Can you take that on a tinus with a whole glass of water? And
that is a big shaila because you're probably thirsty on a tinus.
Right.
That's very fair. That'd be very fair. So, it's all the things we spoke about today. Everybody said, don't forget, Yom Kippur, you take a full glass of water, whether you're thirsty or not, you're out of here. There's two separate sugyas. One is the sugya of brachos, one's the sugya of is the body getting a yeshiva das and this and that. Zikra ma'isa achila. And certainly flavored waters and flavored seltzers, certainly no shaila in the world that they get a bracha, even a little bit of flavor, that's no shaila. Even a faint.
If you take a pill on a tinus when you're definitely thirsty, why don't you have to make a bracha on the water?
That's a very good shaila. And they asked that shaila to the Shevet HaLevi. And I don't remember offhand what he said. I think the Shevet HaLevi, that's a very, very good shaila. What was the answer? Let me just think a minute. I think they answered that it's all Talian is kavana, but the shaila is better than the answer, the vaila. Until I see it inside, it's a very big shaila. But al kapanim, let's make a sikum. First of all,
one more shaila, but quite around. This is a thematic question. Since the Rav mentioned this several times today, Paiskim on both sides of these questions, etc. So what does that mean? It means Savik Brachos L'Hakol, or does it mean, is there an Indian not to drink these things? Because
I think you have to avoid the shaila. I avoid these shailas always. I always avoid these shailas.
I'm saying, so what do you say? You allowed to say Kim Lee to one of the Paiskim in Archaim? How does this work? Or should I, is there an Indian to say all these multiple suffix? Don't drink.
I feel like this. I'm about to say a chiddush, so brace yourself. I feel that in this sugya, the Mishabura, to my simple understanding, is very clear that it's any positive anah, it warrants a bracha. And we saw Paiskim on both sides klape these shilas. So therefore, if one wants to do like the Mishabura and make the bracha, let's say the hot water or the cold water, he wants to, or the dry throat. Once it's doing something positive, then I would say it is not going to be make like the Mishabura and make a bracha. The unbelievable chiddush is Mishabura. So Akapanim, the Mishabura over here tells us an unbelievable chiddush that when you are doing something positive for the body, that's the kaveya. If you're doing something positive for the body, the kaveya is it's not totally in chaych. Chaych is also a reason to make a bracha. But by water, the etzim fact that the water is doing something positive for my body. It shows, says the Mishabura, that was the diak we had in the Mishabura and Sivkotin Mem, that if it must be that I'm thirsty if my cheich is getting nana. Who cares if you're thirsty? Just tell me the cheich is nana and that should be enough. The diak gavaldik in the Mishabura, that the etzim fact that I am getting anah shows that I'm thirsty. And that's the ikr when it comes to water. Are you thirsty? So now we said, so now it's not just thirsty, maybe it's other anahs. The Mishnah gave the example of shriyas haichal, doing something positive for the body, assisting in the digestion, not getting the food down. That's, of course, just a mavriach ari of sorts, not when you need to pater with a bracha, you wouldn't make, not when you need to get medicine down, you wouldn't make a bracha. If you want to get rid of a miserable taste, you wouldn't make a bracha. If you're just filling up your stomach, you wouldn't make a bracha. If you need milk, a woman needs milk, that I hear that's done in both ways. I could have thought maybe you would need a bracha. Yitzchak Zilberstein says you don't. I could hear even according to Mishnah Berurah that you don't make a bracha in that case. Shirayim from the Rebbe, you got to go to a different Rebbe. Shirayim from a Litvisha, Rosh Hashiva, B'kai Govna, you would probably not make a bracha. You would definitely not make a bracha because you're not drinking it for any positive hana. If a person has a phlegm-filled throat, he doesn't make a bracha. If he has a dry throat, so then there's a big zat to say that it lubricates it and maybe he does make a bracha, but that is a big fight. And Rav Yashiv said not like that. He said you don't make a bracha. When it comes to filling yourself up before a tainis or stamazoi, so the Imrayemis, the Svasemis said yes to make a bracha, and that is only muvan lafi the Mishnah Berurah. It could be the other way. The Mishnah Berurah might also agree. It's not to say not like that because maybe it's not enough that your body is now hydrated. Maybe yeah, maybe no. That's the Ladin. The Shaila bracha achrayna. One shouldn't forget that if he didn't get a shear of a bracha achrayna of tzamai, then he also can make a bracha achrayna. If he's drinking because he likes the taste of the hot water, of the cold water, I think Pacha should make a bracha. But if he doesn't want the taste, he wants the heat in his body, he wants to cool down his body. So then the Pri Chodesh said, yeah, which again only makes sense according to Mishnah Berurah, is doing something positive for the body. And the others said, no, that is a shaila. Spring water is the same sugya the whole day. Seltzer, ladati, he would make a bracha.
Okay.